Okay. Welcome back to Abilene People, the podcast here on BigCountryHomepage.com, where we talk to Abilene's most interesting people. And wow, today we have one of Abilene's most interesting people, Floyd Miller. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine, Danny. Happy to be here. Happy to be here.
Really glad you're here. You've been on the list for a while. We finally got you on the calendar, and here you are. So I want to talk a little bit about some interesting things from your past. And then I want to get to the West Texas Tribune and a fundraiser that you're having. I want to talk about that and let you let Abilene know why that's so important to you. And then I want to get right toward the end, talk about the First Amendment and talk about what's going on in America today. Does that all sound good?
It sounds good. Okay,
you are originally from Hallettsville, Texas.
Yes.
And then you graduated from Hallettsville High School, which was I'm spoiling something I want to talk about, but you were in the first integrated class to ever graduate from Hallettsville High School back in the late 60s.
Absolutely.
And which means you graduated when you were 3 years old, which in itself is a remarkable accomplishment.
That certainly is.
Yeah, that's incredible. And then you went to Prairie View A&M.
Yes.
Historically black college.
Correct.
And a really fine college. In fact, a friend of mine's wife was an administrator there for many years. Great things to say about Prairie View A&M, which, if people don't know, is down between Hempstead and Waller, Texas, just out 290 from Houston. Mm-hmm. And then you came to Abilene, where you met your wife and married Marilyn, and you guys have been married for 50-something years.
53.
53. Seems like yesterday, I'm sure.
Yeah, it does sometimes.
It really is incredible, isn't it?
It is.
Wait, you said it feels like that sometimes. Floyd, she's going to watch this. It feels like it's just yesterday, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of things is like yesterday. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
It's true. Mm-hmm. It's true. It is something how time, all of a sudden is past us. Y'all have 3 adult children.
Absolutely. And 3 grandchildren.
You got 3 grandkids? Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
So my wife and I do not yet have grandchildren. That'd be a wonderful thing someday, but, whatever's in the future is in the future, right?
Yes, indeed.
So, okay, you came to Abilene. You have experienced 3 distinct firsts in your life. One I already mentioned. You were in the first integrated high school graduating class for Hallettsville High School.
Yes.
You were the first African-American hired as a chemical agriculture product salesman.
Right.
For the parent company of, is it Eli?
Yeah, it was Elanco, which Eli Lilly is the parent company.
So I don't know that it's really possible for a white person in a majority white nation to understand the significance of integration, graduating from the first integrated class from the Black American perspective. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's possible for somebody who's not lived it to understand the significance of being the first person of color, first Black person to be a ag chemical salesman for a big company like that. And they moved you to Abilene. And so did you know anybody in Abilene?
I didn't know anybody in Abilene, but I had always wanted to come to Abilene. In fact, between my sophomore and junior year, I tried to enroll at Abilene Christian, but after looking at everything, we agreed that I should just stay where I was, and that was a blessing, because if I had come to Abilene, I would have probably missed the opportunity to go to work for Elanco.
Oh, I see. Okay. And that was your rationale, because it was a job that brought you to Abilene, and then that's where you met Marilyn, who was a student at Abilene Christian.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So I'm curious, when you moved to Abilene, was that, although you had always wanted to come to Abilene, you said, well, but still, that was a pretty big move, right? I mean, in a big move for somebody who was the first ever in that position.
Right. And there were a few other interesting things about it. I think the underlying cause of me wanting to come to Abilene is ACU is a Church of Christ school. I wanted to marry a Church of Christ girl. That was somewhere in my mind. So I thought, well, maybe this would be the best place to come to do that. But it was delayed for a couple of years. And while we're talking about that, I'll talk to you about how I got to Abilene. Once Elanco hired me, I first went to Lubbock, worked there for a few months, went to Dallas, and I had a low draft number. That was the time you had that lottery deal and you got low draft number. So I was probably about to get drafted, and my boss asked me, said, Floyd, what are you going to do? I said, well, I think I'm going to join, see if I can get in the Navy Reserve. I went and talked with them, and they said, yeah, Floyd, we'll give you until Friday to make up your mind. And that was maybe a week or two off. And I remember me and my regional manager was flying back from San Antonio on Braniff Airlines. And he said, Floyd, what are you going to do? I said, as soon as that plane lands, I'm going to call Sergeant Laporta and join the Navy Reserves. So when the plane lands, I go to the first cell phone, I call, the phone rings, nobody picks up. I go to the office, same thing, nobody picks up. And then I call again a little before 5 o'clock, nobody picks up. Sergeant Laporta does not pick up. So I said, okay, Floyd, you're getting ready to go to Vietnam. This was on a Friday. Sunday, after I was coming home from church, my radio was playing. Radio in the house was playing, and as I opened the door, it said, news alert. President Nixon has suspended the draft. I go to work the next day, and my boss says, Floyd, are you ready for territory? I said, yes, sir. He said, pack your stuff and get ready to go to Abilene. So that's the other part of that story, is how I got to Abilene.
Unbelievable. So you really did think, because the sergeant wasn't answering the phone, you weren't going to get in the Navy Reserves, you had a low draft number, you were headed to Nam.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's what I thought.
Well, I got to tell you, Abilene's a big upgrade.
Well, yes.
A better destination.
Yes.
And then how long until you actually got to Abilene then? Because they gave you this sales territory, and you come over here as a rep, as a selling rep for this product, and you start working that area. I guess it was Abilene and many counties in the big country.
Yeah, about 12 to 15 counties. So once they told me that, I was out here about a week later, because I'd been training and I was ready, but the big thing was this low draft number. Yeah.
So they were obviously tickled for you too.
Oh yes, yeah.
Okay, so you come over here and then you start working. How long until you started conveniently hanging out wherever the young co-eds from Abilene Christian were hanging out so that you could meet Marilyn?
Well, this is another interesting story. My mother had went to a gospel meeting in LaGrange, Texas, which is about 30 miles from Hallettsville, and there was a guy doing the gospel meeting named John Whitley, and he was preaching at the 10th and Treadaway Church of Christ. So my mother said, well, Floyd, when you go to Abilene, maybe you ought to go to that 10th and Treadaway Church of Christ. So that's the church I went to.
And that's where Marilyn was.
Marilyn was there.
Okay.
And so this was at the end of January. I moved here. I guess Marilyn and I started dating in February. We were married in August.
Wow. Okay, and she's originally from Tennessee or something.
Yeah, Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. I'm just curious. I don't know. I have no idea if it's even okay to ask the question, but I'm going to ask it.
Okay. So,
did her parents, that's not exactly the era where you could Skype or Zoom or FaceTime call somebody, right? How soon did they meet you, and did they approve of you? They thought, hey, this guy's okay.
Well, Marilyn's mother, I actually met Marilyn's mother the week that we got married. I'd actually talked with her on the telephone, but I actually met her the week before we got married. I guess maybe even the same week that we got married,
And it was okay. She said, oh, "Okay, this guy's okay."
yeah. Now I had talked with her quite a bit. I talked with her quite a bit on the phone. Yeah.
Again, I'm not that much younger than you, but it just seems to me that young people in the audience, it would be hard for them to wrap their mind around this, in this day and age. I don't know. Maybe I'm over dramatizing that, but I don't know. There's something very romantic about that idea. Something very, I don't know. It makes me smile to think about it. I don't know. Simpler times. I don't know. I don't really know what I'm trying to say.
So we had a great relationship with her mother and her dad. They were separated, but I had a great relationship with both of them. But I remember meeting her mother, and I thought, we've really hit it off. And I'm sitting there having a conversation, and we're talking about the Sweetwater rattlesnake roundup, and she asked me, and I'm talking about milking the steaks, and so she says, "What do they milk them like you milk a cow?" And then I'm saying, how do I answer this? And I start. And she said, "Oh, I know, Floyd. I know." So I was sure glad for her interruption there.
I've met people that aren't from West Texas that they can't even wrap their mind around the rattlesnake roundup. What in the world?
Yeah.
Okay, so I mentioned there were three firsts, and this next first brings you up pretty contemporary times. First integrated class at Hallettsville High School. You were the first black salesperson hired by that particular company to represent them anywhere, much less West Texas. And then, and by the way, I'm sure you did pretty well, because then you eventually left that and became a financial investment advisor, and you have your own company, and then you started West Texas Tribune.
Right.
And West Texas Tribune's been around for a while, but in the not too distant past, you turned it into a nonprofit.
Correct.
And that's the first nonprofit community newspaper in Abilene's history. So give us the timeline of West Texas Tribune, and then how it was you decided to turn it into a nonprofit, and how's it doing today?
Well, it was about 3 years ago that we turned it into a nonprofit, and I did that for a couple of reasons. Nonprofit newspapers it's kind of a trending thing across the country, and I just wanted to get in on that. And part of it is with all of the different type of medias, newspaper like what I'm doing it's almost a dinosaur in a way. People look at it a little different. So I thought, I want to keep doing the paper. I want the paper to continue after I'm no longer at the helms. I don't have any thoughts about giving that up right now, but I just wanted to put it in a position that, maybe somebody's still doing it 50 years from now, 100 years from now, if we're still here. So that's part of my thinking and going that direction.
And you guys still have a print edition, or is it purely digital now?
We have a print and digital.
And how does that work? Pardon me. How often do you print?
We print once a month, and we update the website, maybe 2 or 3 times a week. It all depends on what's going on.
So, pardon me, you have been, we're going to come back to journalism and the newspaper and all here in a second, but you have been an integral part of so many organizations in Abilene. Before you ever started the paper as a nonprofit, you were really involved in nonprofit life in Abilene. You've been on boards, you've been chairman of boards, you've won awards. In fact, there's that verse in Scripture that says about Jesus, he did so many things. This is just a few. If there's not enough room for all the books in the world if we wrote down everything that he did. I kind of think that's about Floyd Miller in terms of all of your engagements and the awards that you've won. Do you mind if I just mention a few?
That's okay.
And okay, so you have been involved in the Abilene Black Chamber of Commerce.
Yes, literally almost since its inception.
You were named the Ambassador of the Year for Volunteerism, which is acts on the behalf of the community to inform, educate, and pursue the best for individuals in the community. So you were given that award at some point in the not too distant past. You and Marilyn became the first couple to receive the ICANN Hero Award back in 2020 for your work in the Interested Citizens of Abilene North ICANN organization gave you that award. You have been president of the board of Hospice of the Big Country.
Yeah, and I want to say just a word about Hospice of the Big Country. Sometimes out of all of the boards that I was on, sometimes I say maybe that was the purest one from the standpoint of what we were doing is helping people. We were helping people that were probably not going to lunch with them, probably not going to church with them. We are helping on what I call a piece of the way. When I was growing up in the country, my cousin lived further up in the woods than I did. And when our parents would call us home, we would always say, hey, can I go a piece of the way? We knew they would not let us go all the way back to our cousin's house, but they might let us walk down the road just a little bit. And that was my feeling about hospice. We were there to go a piece of the way with people. We couldn't go where they were going, but we would go with them as far as we could. No expectations at all. And that's kind of the way I've served on most of those boards, but this one, just no expectation at all.
That's a beautiful image, really.
Well, thank you.
I can't say I've ever heard somebody express that.
Thank you.
And that's really true of hospice work.
Yeah.
I've known a few hospice nurses. I don't think physicians, but I've known some hospice chaplains, and typically just salt of the earth people that walk with people in very dark times.
True.
But there's also a lot of light and hope there too. I love that image, a piece of the way.
Thank you.
Okay, so back to this voluminous list of things. I mentioned the Black Chamber of Commerce, but you've been a board member and president as well as an honoree by that organization. You've been on the board for Christian Service Center.
Yes.
One of Abilene's, I think, most integral nonprofits to help people who are very often on the margins with the basic needs, but not an organization that just simply gives things away, but an organization that builds relationships and bridges with people. I mean, it's just a wonderful organization.
Yeah,
you were on that board.
I talked with Jim the other day and took some things over there, and probably got a few more.
60 years that organization's been going. Yeah, it's amazing. You spent 10 years on the Planning and Zoning Commission for the city.
Yes.
10 years. I mean, almost, I don't know. That's a long time. I mean, to be on one board.
Yeah,
that's a lot of meetings.
It is, and that one was pretty interesting too, because that one really kind of gave you an insight as to what was going on with the city, kind of which way it was growing, what developers were thinking, and that type of thing.
And you're still currently on the Development Corporation of Abilene, DCOA board.
Yes.
And we talked briefly before Travis hit record on the podcast about the data center, the Abilene Data Center, sometimes called Crusoe or Lancium or Stargate, but they prefer Abilene Data Center. We just had Deshelle Burris, the head of construction for DPR, here on the podcast, just sat in that chair a couple of days ago, along with Tristan Simmons, who's works there on site with EquipShare for all the equipment. Fascinating. And you mentioned that you've been out to the site. And what are your reactions?
I mean, to me, it's almost overwhelming. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen anything like that before.
Well, I think you and I were saying Travis and I went out after the podcast and toured with Deshelle for a bit, and it is overwhelming. That's about all I could say. It's just stunning. But the piece of property that they've acquired and they're building on is like if you were, we're here at the studio on South 14th. You office on South 14th at the corner of Willis and South 14th.
Right.
And it's like if you started driving there, went west, past the TV station and past the Hobby Lobby and Abuelos, and you got to the Loop, maybe that's about the length, and then again the width of the property. It's just amazing, incredible.
It is, and it's there's a lot of things that's being worked on. Misty Mayo and her team, they really work hard.
Yeah, they do, and you know, I think people who have not been as involved as you are with the DCOA, with the nonprofit boards, with civic leadership and volunteerism, it's easy. People who've not been involved, it's easy for them to slip into cynicism. You know, well, you know, the DCOA is just using a lot of taxpayer money. Well, everything that we've just talked about is an incentive for all of us to have our eyes open and realize what good hard work does for this community. I mean,
Absolutely.
My attitude is that data center is going to be built somewhere. Why not here? Now, having said that, we addressed in the podcast, you know, all the questions, not maybe all, but a lot of the questions that people have.
Right, yeah.
About, you know, well, what's it going to be and how's it going to, well, you know, we'll find out, but the careful planning hopefully will bear great fruit for low noise emission, low power consumption, water consumption, and good stewardship and sustainability on the part of the data center. But my point is you've been involved in those conversations
Yes.
for a long time, longer than most of us were even aware it was coming. Yeah. So kudos, sir.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Okay. So I want to get back to the West Texas Tribune. Did you know anything about a newspaper when you jumped into the West Texas Tribune and started it?
I like the way you asked that question because there was a newspaper before the West Texas Tribune, not the same newspaper, but after it went out of business, one day I was talking with my wife and I said, Marilyn, I think I'll start a newspaper. And she said, you don't know anything about a newspaper. Although she's really been my best partner. She normally goes along with most things. And I said, Marilyn, I said, that was the same thing that the guy that owned that other paper said. He would sit in my office and say, Mr. Miller, I didn't know anything about a newspaper. I just started one. So I said, that's the qualifications I got.
So you were in good company.
Right.
Didn't know a thing.
Right.
Well, what kind of learning curve was there? I mean, it had to have been a learning curve, but you got past it. And then, because the West Texas Tribune's been around for what, 15, 17?
20 years.
20 years.
Yeah.
20 years. So it has staying power.
Well, thank you. So I don't know. I like to write. And I can learn pretty well if it's something that I've got an interest in. And the newspaper was one thing that I definitely have an interest in.
So, and then as we've talked about, you've turned it into a nonprofit, and you mentioned that that's a trend around the nation. I know nothing about that. I would suspect most of the podcast audience doesn't know much about that. So is that because there's not a lot of money to be made, or is that because it can function more independently as a nonprofit, or what are the motivating factors to turn a newspaper like the West Texas Tribune into a nonprofit?
Okay, well, one thing is money. It's not a get rich quick thing. I'm not even sure that I don't think it's a get rich deal. Period. But I think it's a community service. I mean, I think communities, they need good schools, they need a post office, they need churches, and they need a good newspaper. And I think if you don't have that, your community loses something.
Well, you've been quoted as saying, "For a time like this, I just think that it's so important to get information out that is true, solid, and reliable. If media is not doing that, who is?" And in this day and age, with social media and digital media, things happen so fast.
Well, I think it's I think it's two organizations that's kind of helping us to keep this fragile democracy together. The one that I think could do even more, possibly, is our churches. Because for years, people like myself that had went to church basically all their lives, we've heard Sunday school teachers tell us over and over what our behavior should be like. And now I find myself wondering, what would my grandpa what would my grandpa think if he came back and talked with some of us? I think he would wonder, well, that don't seem like the same church I went to. We wasn't talking about those type things. We wasn't doing those type things. So I think churches, and then I think our newspapers are essential, but they have to tell the truth. And nobody wants to just come out and straight call people a lie. But some of this stuff, we just have to say it a little stronger. That's not true. That's not right. And there may be something in our paper, but if it is, it's a mistake. You know, we may not get everything right, but we're not sitting there and intentionally writing something that we know to be wrong.
Do you see that more and more and more in our world today, in America particularly, where there's intentionality in misleading people, and particularly in this digital age where things happen so fast?
Yes.
And you mentioned your grandpa. What would he say? So much that happens that's just, even if it's not a question of is it correct or factual, it's a question of is it ethical and moral. There's so much that happens today on our national platforms that is just would not be accepted by anybody just 10 years ago. It was unthinkable.
Right.
Do you think journalism and the First Amendment is on life support in America today?
I think it is. I think it is. And even the young man that was killed I guess it was last week now, one thing that we might forget, you know, we may think more about his politics and whatever, but he was part of the media. You may say that he was a journalist in some ways. He was a journalist. So when you stop and think about people getting shot for what they say, but it's really nothing. It's really nothing new. I mean, if you look back at the history of this country, I mean, why did John F. K get killed? Why did RFK get killed? Why did Dr. Martin Luther King get killed? Why did they blow up the church in Birmingham? Why did those 3 college students get killed in Mississippi? Was buried in a tank bank. Why did Emmett Till get killed? And the list goes on and on. And in most cases, it was because of what somebody thought or what they did. In most cases, it was just what they thought.
I'm pausing because I want to give weight to the questions you just asked. Those are big questions.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, as a nation, we have a history of assassinations and political violence.
We do.
And I think that we have a responsibility as citizens to ask what kind of ethical and moral behaviors are appropriate in our world today, what's needed in our world today, and then each of us should commit to be that.
Yes.
If we frame those questions like you did, well, why did these things happen? And we just let those questions sit with us for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I think we all can choose better. I wonder if social media, and of course we're here, irony, in a digital studio. Many people will consume this conversation in a social media context or first be introduced to it in clips in social media.
Right.
So I acknowledge the irony, but I wonder if social media is much more of a problem than any of us could have guessed 5 and 10 years ago.
Well, I think that's right. But even this is social media that you and I are participating in right now. But there's still a difference than what most people participate in. You and I are right across from each other. We could reach, we could touch each other, and so unless something just went way off the rail, you and I are going to probably have just a pretty cordial. We're going to have a cordial conversation. But when you don't have to face that individual, all bets off. People say things that's unbelievable sometimes.
You and I had no idea we would have this conversation or go here in the conversation. But I shared this with some friends recently. Social media is full of wild claims and toxic vitriol. That's why I treat it as a place to share opinions, interests, funny memes. It's not a place to argue or debate. Do that in person or not at all. Social media doesn't nurture emotional maturity. If anything, arguing and debating online hinders healthy emotional development.
Mm-hmm.
You agree with that?
I do agree with that.
So having a face to talk to and sitting down over a cup of coffee or a meal or along a church pew and fellowshipping afterwards, talking at a social gathering for a Kiwanis club that I know you've belonged to. I guess you probably still do. I don't know. But
Yeah, I just came from it.
Joining boards, looking for civic help and responsibilities. I mean, these are the things that build societies.
Right.
Going down rabbit hole after rabbit hole in your own thought world on digital platforms probably doesn't, or not. Right. I shouldn't say probably. It just doesn't contribute as much.
Right.
Let's talk about the big fundraiser you got coming up for your nonprofit, West Texas Tribune.
Well, thank you. It is a fundraiser, and so that is one of our objectives, is to raise funds. You might say, why would somebody in the media pick a religious type event? Because some people would say that they don't go together. I think they do. And the reason I'm doing it is I want to connect the West Texas Tribune with what I believe is the most powerful force in the universe, and that is the gospel. Our paper, we think, is a good newspaper, but it is not the good news, because after every story, after every opinion page, we have to, nothing changes unless we change. And so I wanted a cross section of people from Abilene to get in a building, and we all sing praises to the same God. And while we're sitting there, somebody might look over my way and say, you know, that's Floyd. I don't agree with that guy on everything, but man, he's praising God this evening. And I might look over the way and see somebody with the same way. And so I'm hoping that it would take the temperature down a little bit. I'll just tell you, one of the songs that will be led as a congregational song is Angry Words. Angry words, oh, let them never. You know, there's been so many friendships and things destroyed because of angry words that we've said to one another, defending somebody, in many cases, that don't know us, don't know our names, and maybe at the end of the day could even care less. So I'm hoping it brings us together from that standpoint. Hopefully we will raise some money. We're not going to be chasing people around the building for donations. We're going to have QR codes. We'll have some envelopes for people that might want to make a donation. We're going to have some light refreshments. It's not going to be a 5-course meal, but we will have some light refreshments. Hopefully have an opportunity to visit.
This event's coming up at the Highland Church of Christ.
Saturday, September the 27th at 6:00 p.m.
You mentioned your grandpa. What would your grandpa think about QR codes? You know, and cell phones and everything. I think about that sometimes. Like most people, I had 4 grandparents, and I think 3 of them wouldn't know what to do with any of that. But one of them, my little paternal grandmother, she would love it. She would be on the cutting edge of all of it.
I don't know what they would think. They'd probably think the same thing that my kids think if I mention slide rule. What's that?
Yeah, that's right.
What's that? What's that?
Right.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. You know, I was thinking of that old hymn, Angry Words, and if I'm not mistaken, the chorus of that says, love one another.
Yes.
And I heard something the other day that I thought was so rich, that had these influences been the influences of the young man who killed last week, the influences of loving one another and the influences of singing hymns and sitting at tables and talking to people, think how different life would have turned out for everybody in the life of this nation over the last several days.
Yeah, I was just looking at some scriptures to kind of address that. One says, let no corrupting talk come out of your mouth, but only such as is good for building up, as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear. And there's a lot of scriptures like that. I mean, be quick to hear, slow to speak. I mean, there's probably 8 or 10 of them that, just would roll off of my tongue. And so I guess in addition to raising money, this is kind of my gift in a way for us to just come together and enjoy ourselves. Maybe see if we can reset this thing a little bit.
Reset this thing a little bit. Good words. Good words. Floyd Miller. What a pleasure to have you in the studio for our podcast today.
Well, thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it.
And if people wanted to subscribe to the West Texas Tribune, they can do that.
Yes, you can go to westtexastribune.org. There is a subscribe button, and our subscription at this time is still free, but we would like for you to subscribe. And while you're over there, there is also a donate button, and you can donate whatever you would wish. And if you stay there long enough, you can browse. We have, I'm saying 99% of all the editions that we have ever printed is online. I think we have 100, but I just say 99% in case we're missing one.
Well, you have the very first edition is online.
Yes.
So that goes back 20 years. And I've got to mention that one of our staff members here that works for Nexstar Media Incorporated here, KTAB, KRBC, Telemundo, Ida Pantoja is one of your writers and contributors with photographs and such. So, yeah, you've got a robust group of people helping you out who are doing exactly what the mission of the West Texas Tribune is, which is to keep the community informed and focus on people and events. So good to see you, sir.
Nice to see you. Thank you very much.
We really do appreciate you coming by.
All
And
right.
I love that idea of what you're doing at the Highland Church of Christ again on Saturday the 27th at 6 p.m. to reset.
Yes.
I like that a lot.
Thank
I like
you.
that a lot.
Thank you.
And I like it when you mentioned the donut button. Or you said donate, but I like donut button. You know, that's what we need.
Both of them are pretty good.
That's what we need.
Yeah.
A button for some more donuts, but a little bit of that fellowship that we're known for. Okay. So thank you for joining us here on the podcast Abilene People. And I know you'll agree that today we've had a really interesting conversation with a lot of substance and a lot to think about with Floyd Miller from the West Texas Tribune. And I want to give a big thanks to Travis Corrigan, our ace producer, who makes it all happen for us. I'm your host, Danny Sims, and we will see you next time here on Abilene People. Thank you.